because we can't notice anything because the changes are so small. Everything looks the same. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like we're slipping through universes. It just feels like we're in one reality and it's linear and we're going from point A to point B. And as we go from point A to point B, we have these experiences, our body ages. And, so it seems like we're living in one reality. What you're doing is reconnecting strings. I can't believe it took me so long to put this together for myself. I mean, I was a practitioner for, 4 years. I just never thought about reconnecting strings, which is ironic because, for like 5 or 6 years before I even was introduced to these frequencies, I had come across some teachers that what they were saying felt so right. It made more sense than anything that I had ever been told in my life. And so, I had developed this belief system. I had listened to this information. It made sense. I applied it in my life. I started noticing the changes in my life. And so, I trusted, this information. But some of the information was just way too abstract to quite understand for me. Like, they all these teachers that I was listening to were talking about the same thing, and how, we're really living in like this holographic experience. I mean, because we know that, when you're looking at atom, it's 99.99999% empty space. So there's really nothing there. It's just really energy vibrating. And so there's this consciousness, like everything is consciousness. And so it's the consciousness that is holding this energy together into the physical form. And this is really abstract. So you don't have to understand this. You know what I mean? It's just this is what I was believing. And one of the things that they mentioned is that the way we experience time and space is that we are actually shifting. We're shifting 1 billion times a second. It's almost the frame rate of reality. And we're sliding through these parallel universes, you could say, because we're recreating our body. Everything is being recreated 1 billion times a second. So you're always new. The reason everything seems to be in linear time is because we believe everything from that last moment, and so we're just flowing through this particular stream of consciousness. And I know this is abstract, and you don't have to get this. It doesn't matter. You don't have to believe this. And so one of the things that they were all talking about was how, we're sliding through these parallel universes 1 billion times a second. But there was a couple of these teachers that started saying that there will be a day when you start to become conscious of these slipping through different universes. Because we can't notice anything because the changes are so small. Everything looks the same. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like we're slipping through universes. It just feels like we're in one reality and it's linear and we're going from point A to point B. And as we go from point A to point B, we have these experiences, our body ages. And, so it seems like we're living in one reality. But, some of these teachers were talking about how there will be a time when you'll start to be aware of these changes. And when you start to notice the difference is when you'll start becoming conscious of two different realities at the same time. Still very abstract. I mean, I don't even know what that means. And it doesn't even matter if you believe that or not. I mean, it doesn't change who you are. You know, I'm the same friend, I'm the same husband, I'm the same dad. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter, you know? But it felt right to me, even though I had no proof whatsoever. So I just preferred to believe that's the way our reality operates. That's how we experience time and space and movement, is through these slipping through these parallel universes. This isn't new. I mean, we've always been doing this. This is just what we do. This is the experience down here. Until you start to notice these differences. And then something happens. So in the beginning, what you're doing is reconnecting strings. When this first came through, nobody had even come up with the idea for string theory. So, Eric was thinking that strings and strands were the same thing. And then later, this concept, this theory of string theory, was thought up. And so, it's talking about these parallel universes and how they're connected by these vibrating strings of energy. So, even though I believed all this, and then I discovered these frequencies, and I know these are real, you know what I mean? And I can just feel the difference in my life, so when it's talking about, you're reconnecting your DNA, and it's the light and information, I've seen all these healings. I feel different. My friends feel different. Everyone I know that is attuned to these frequencies, like their internal compass gets turned on. So I know this is real. But I wasn't even thinking about the string part. Maybe I just wasn't ready to jump on that wagon yet. But until about 2 years ago. And then I started noticing these changes in my life. These memories that I would have that aren't a part of this reality. Now, I know this sounds abstract, so I'll give you some examples, because this is just common stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this is not some crazy abstract, concepts. This is just everyday stuff. A classic example would be the JFK assassination. Now, I used to be a big conspiracy guy. And so I've put in my JFK time. You know what I mean? Like, I've spent, I don't know, at least 60, 100 hours in my life, researching this information. And I remember that one of the final, whether he was shot by Oswald or the grassy knoll, or, and I remember there was this one theory. I remember this crystal clear, because I remember saying, wow, that actually kind of looks like he did that. The theory is the driver actually fired the last shot. And so I distinctly remember saying, wow, that's a good possibility, because, in the film, it actually looks like, the driver turns around and it looks possible. And in the reality that I remember, John F. Kennedy was with his wife, and they were in a black Lincoln 4-door convertible. But in this reality, it wasn't a 4-door. It was a stretched limousine. There were 6 seats, and there were 6 people in that car. There were 6 seats in there. I know for a fact in my reality that there were 4 people in that car. Okay, and when I watched the film, all the original footage, there's 6 people in that car. So, how do you wrap your brain around it? Is it a bad memory? You know what I mean? Am I just making all this stuff up? Another example would be, there was this company called Publishers Clearinghouse. And they had this guy. There was the spokesperson, Ed McMahon. He was Johnny Carson's sidekick. And so if you were in Publishers Clearinghouse, and Ed McMahon showed up at your doorstep with a big fat check, you were a winner. You know what I mean? You wanted Ed McMahon to come to your house with a big fat check. I remember that. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he was the spokesperson. But in this reality, he was never a spokesperson for Publishers Clearinghouse. Never. He never showed up at anybody's door with a big fat check. I mean, I know this sounds, trivial, but it's not trivial. I mean, it is trivial because it doesn't affect your life like your daily, living. But that's different than the reality I grew up. I remember when I grew up, there was these books called the Berenstain Bears. And I read all the books. I dug the books, you know what I mean? I watched the cartoons. I read the books to my kids. And I know that those bears were spelled S-T-E-I-N. I know that. There is no doubt in my mind that they were spelled S-T-E-I-N. But now, in this reality, they're spelled S-T-A-I-N. Stain, Berenstain. You will not find a book on this planet where the Berenstain books are spelled S-T-E-I-N. Not a book on this planet. So that I guarantee you, if you're old enough to remember these bears, these books, ask anybody, how did you spell that last name? It was E-I-N. Everybody will say that. Let's talk about maybe, and there's been so many little changes to logos. The VW logo. I remember the VW logo. The V was part of the W. They were connected. It was one symbol. My dad had VWs. My mom had VWs. I had a Volkswagen. I remember what that logo looked like. Now there's a dash between the V and the W. Now people were like, oh, well, they changed the logos. You know what I mean? Like, people changed logos. Yeah, no shit. I mean, I know that people change their logos, and I know they rebrand products. If you go back to the beginning of Volkswagen company, it's always had that dash in between the V and W. In my reality, there was no dash. And it's a small thing. Who cares? Doesn't affect your life. I remember people remember an actress named Sally Fields? Remember Sally Fields? She used to be in, movies with Burt Reynolds and Sally Fields.
Rather subtle. Now, later on, a couple of months later I think Sally Fields came on the show.
Her name was never Sally Fields. You remember Superman, Christopher Reeves? I mean, you got to remember Christopher Reeves, the original Superman. Yeah, his name was never Christopher Reeves. It was Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve? Who the hell's that? That's not the dude that I remember. I remember Christopher Reeves. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these experiences that I've become aware of that are different than my reality. So how does this fit in with, the reconnecting strings? Well, once I started discovering all these alternative memories that I was having that don't match the reality of this reality, I'm down here in the Yucatan, so I don't stay in touch with a bunch of people. I got 8 friends that I, contact in my family. So once I became aware of, these memories and how many there were that are different, as I would talk to my friends, I would bring it up to them and I would say, hey man, you know what I mean? Do you remember C-3PO, having a silver leg and a silver foot in the Star Wars? Because I don't remember that. I remember him being gold. And they'd be like, he's gold. He doesn't have a silver leg. And as I would go through these, I'd say, hey, Dad, you remember the Ford logo? Did it always have that pigtail, that curly Q on the F? I don't remember that. I remember it being straight. As I was talking to, my family and my friends, every one of them had the same memories as me. But none of them matched this current reality, which I thought was very ironic. How can all these people that I'm talking to every one of them have the same memory as me. I don't know. That just seems weird. And then I started realizing that, wait a second. Everybody that I'm talking to has either been reconnected or they've had a variety of sessions with me. I started thinking, wait a second. Reconnecting strings, string theory, and what I believe about, how we're constantly shifting through these different realities. Now this is just my belief. Okay, like this isn't like, there is no belief of the reconnection. You know what I mean? Like you could go to there is no like certain belief. We all have our own beliefs. And we're not supposed to all believe the same thing. That would be ridiculous. I mean, you could go to the reconnection and you could say, hey man, there's this guy named Case, and he's talking about how reconnecting strings, he's talking about how we're actually sliding through parallel universes 1 billion times a second. And he's saying that these frequencies are reconnecting strings, and they're allowing us to become conscious of 2 different realities at the same time. What is going? They might say, oh, he smoked too much weed. or they might say, he's on point. That's exactly what's happening. So I'm not speaking for the reconnection. I'm just speaking for me and how I am piecing together what I'm seeing in my life. And this reconnecting strings and this sliding through parallel universes, it almost makes more sense than the healings I have seen at these training programs. I mean, I have seen things that are they're impossible. They're absolutely, they don't make any sense. There's no rational way they can happen. One of them, I don't tell anybody this because this isn't a healing. You know what I mean? This is just an experience. And why this happened, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this just happened so the people that were there and her friends would talk about it and just be like, because this really happened. I know this happened. We're at a training program in Ljubljana in Slovenia. And this lady from Germany comes up. And, if you have a question, you just submit your questions and, we get them translated, into English. And then, Eric will, answer the questions on stage. So this lady comes up and, I don't speak German, so she gives me the question, thank you. And so I go to the translator and, they translate it, give it back to me, and I'm looking at it. Wait a second. There's a problem here. There's no way that they translated this correctly. There's just no way. So I went and I found the lady, and then I got the translator, and the lady came up with her friend. And so we're sitting there, and I was like, is this what she's saying? You know what I mean? Like, is there a miscommunication here? This lady, here's what she said. This lady, the night before, had a Reconnective Healing session. Because when you go to these training programs, you end up just, getting a Reconnective Healing session with, one of the teaching assistants. It's a beautiful experience, and it's definitely something to experience. So she has this session, goes to sleep. The next day she wakes up, she's just brushing her teeth, and then she realizes, wait a second, what's going on here? She looks in the mirror, and all of her wisdom teeth had grown back the night before. Now, when she's telling this story, I don't speak German, but I do speak people. And there is no doubt in my mind that lady knows that she had her wisdom teeth taken out. She remembers the pain. She remembers her friend picking her up and taking her home. She knows she had wisdom teeth taken out, and now they're all back. Now I remember thinking like, what is going on? How this is I mean, I've seen so many healings, it's unbelievable. This is like out of my scope of like what? See, that's why I don't think anything's impossible anymore. Because what I've seen, there is no impossibilities. So I just assumed, for some reason, I labeled that a healing on some level. I have no idea what that meant or why it happened. But it happened. So now, then a couple years later, 3 years later, I start having these memories, these different memories. And I start realizing, wait a second, I've been believing that we're shifting through parallel universes a billion times a second. We're just not aware of it. What if she didn't grow her teeth back? What if she just shifted to the reality where she never had her teeth taken out? And once I started thinking about that, a lot of these healings started making more sense to me. Because I have just, like I said, I've seen things that are absolutely impossible. And this, this shifting through different realities, this reconnecting of strings, and this becoming conscious of two or more different realities at the same time. I mean, I still have the same wife, I have the same kids, so this is like nothing to fear, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not afraid. In fact, I'm the opposite, I'm the polar opposite of fear. I feel like a kid. I feel like I've been living in this rigid understanding of reality, where we're in one reality, and it is just this continual flow. And once you screw up something, it's screwed up forever. I don't believe that anymore. Time and space is much more fluid than we've ever been told. The only thing that's kept it rigid and locked in is our beliefs that is the way it's happening. And once we start letting go of these concepts of linear time and everything is locked in, life becomes more fluid. And things just change for you. There's something else going on here. Now, I know this is deep down the rabbit hole, kooky shit for a lot of people. And maybe I should have put a warning video, a warning label on this video. But you know what? If we went and we hung out, even though I have these beliefs, I'm still the same person. I guarantee you, if you came over and we had some drinks or we went out, we would have an amazing time. You know what I mean? You're not going to think like, this dude is a fruitcake. You know what I mean? No, so we're all the same people. We're still doing all the same stuff. I'm a dad. I got to go, I got to do my stuff. I got to pay my bills. It's all the same. But there is something going on with this reconnecting strings. And I'm not trying to prove this to you. There's no reason for me to prove this to you. That's like, I have no desire to prove this to you. I'm just telling you my experiences, my friends, my family's experiences, and, see if it makes any sense to you. Because like I said, all this information is for probably like 1% of the population. And so if this is resonating with you, welcome to my world. It's been quite an amazing journey so far. So take that in, assimilate it at whatever speed that you're ready for it, or just turn it off and just forget about me for like 5 years, and then come back and watch it again and see if it makes any sense. Because this is happening. And you can say, oh, this guy, he's got some terrible memories. Like, I don't remember JFK. I remember 6 people. I remember the Berenstain Bears, STAIN. You know what I mean? The VW logo hadn't changed. C3PO always had a silver leg. Well, if that's the case, then How you doing, man? My name's Case, and it's a pleasure to be in your reality, because this is not the reality that I grew up in, okay? And I'm totally cool with that. There is no fear. I wake up every day and I feel like a kid, because I know I am swimming in this sea of potentiality. This is the sea of unlimited intelligence and opportunities. Anything can happen at any day. I am no longer the same old day, the same routine every single day. I've let go of that. I'm not trying. See, you got to catch yourself. When you say the word try, that's the worst word you can ever use. Is I'm trying. You should get rid of that word from your vocabulary. It doesn't have a place in this reality. So, I hope you found this at least entertaining, if not interesting. And, start observing your own life. And just start noticing any small changes that you've noticed. I actually know a guy who was telling me that he'd been driving through his subdivision for like 30 years. He'd lived in the same subdivision for 30 years. And one day he drove by, and there was a 40-year-old tree planted in a lot, and he had never seen it. In his entire life, he'd never seen it. And he just thought that was interesting, and then just moved on with his life. Something happened there. He shifted to a reality where somebody planted that seed of that tree and watered that seed, and it grew to a full-blown tree, and it appeared in his reality in one day. Anything is possible. What you're doing is reconnecting strings. Think about that. Okay, love to you all. I hope I didn't scare anybody. Peace, love, adios.